All right, so now that we are recording, I have to say everything again. Sorry, guys. Oh, okay. So yeah, hi guys. Welcome to the first event for ASME MEAM Buddies. It's meant to be a conversation between all of us, and our first topic. Before we get started about specifically what courses take, just a general tip, a disclaimer is that everything has to do with course counting requirements worksheet should go through Lauren Kemp. As you guys know by now, you guys probably know who she is. I have received emails from her. She has a lot of really good advice to offer you guys about filling out your academic worksheet, slotting in courses throughout your experience at Penn. All right, and so I think the first place to start is to really let you guys know the landscape of the curriculum. So for the freshmen, you guys have this new curriculum that the juniors, seniors, and sophomores right now aren't familiar with, but after doing some research, we've kind of figured out the ins and outs of it, and we have some core advice that we want to offer you guys. So what I suggest all of you to do is to think about, your 8 semesters at Penn, and think about how courses are going to slot into. And just a general picture. Of course, some courses can go in and out, but a couple of things that you need to consider is, when are you taking each of these different categories of requirements? So there's the math and the natural science requirements. There's your core MEAM requirements. There's your professional elective, general electives, concentration courses, and what we're calling free electives. And some of these courses actually double count, and that's something that we'll talk about on the next slide, but or in 2 slides. But these are all things that you can really map out for the rest of your semester. One thing that you shouldn't do is that don't do it semester by semester. You may screw yourself over by missing out on some core credits that you need to plan out for. We'll kind of go over like what classes to take when, but generally, your first 2 semesters, you want to kind of fulfill those core math and natural science requirements. And if you guys took for the freshman and sophomore years. And we suggest that you guys, as mechanical engineers, when you graduate, when you think about your mechanical engineering experience, you want to think about those hands-on opportunities. So courses like MEAM 101 and courses like MEAM 201 are going to be the courses that you want to remember. And so we highly suggest you guys take those courses, and we'll go over those in more detail throughout the presentation. But this is a general sample curriculum that you guys can use at your own will to plan out your schedule. And of course, this is only for one specific concentration. I know you freshmen have 3 different types of concentrations, but this one specifically for energy fluids, thermal systems. I think the best way to kind of map this out is you can use Google spreadsheets or use Microsoft Excel and do it semester by semester, and really just do what I did here on the highlighting and think about, are you fulfilling 7 CUs for general electives or just for math and natural science? Okay, so that was a lot of information. Does anyone have any questions kind of on the way that your curriculum should be kind of mapped out? And if the ASME board wants to add anything, feel free to add whatever you want to add here. All right, I think next slide. Okay, so now we kind of showed you guys a sample curriculum. Let's kind of go over exactly how your 4 years will look like. The lab is a really important sequence that I think is really crucial to your experience at Penn. You're going to start off with your intro labs. Like you're going to be taking that with your physics lab, as well as if you're taking MEAM 110 right now, you're doing that lab right now. But then once you get to your sophomore lab, this is really once you get to see who all the mechanical engineers are, and those are half credit courses. And you're going to be taking that your sophomore fall and your sophomore spring. And then junior lab, which is what I am in right now, is a 1 credit unit lab. And then your culmination of your senior lab is going to be your senior design project. And in between all of that are your core MEAM classes, your specialization courses. So if you choose one specific concentration, that's what you can specialize in, one of these 3. And then it all culminates in that senior design project. And you don't have to think about what project you're going to do for senior design yet, but you have to know that, you have to plan out your schedule accordingly so that you're going to have these 2 senior design credits that are going to exist in your senior fall and your senior spring. So that's just kind of an overview of the flow chart. And feel free, guys, stop us anytime you want to ask questions or pop it in the chat. You can always speak up if you need to. All right. I think this is Jason or Keshav.
Yeah, I can talk about this a little bit. I think Keshav and I might both be able to shed some light. But yeah, so credit multi-counting. And the idea here is that if you guys are planning on pursuing something besides just your main degree, your major, like whether that be a minor or if you're submatriculating and getting like a grad degree from Penn, if you're double majoring, then there's certain classes that can actually count for multiple different requirements, which you can use strategically so you don't have to like take a whole lot more classes just because you're necessarily getting more degrees than the average student might be. So up here is actually my schedule. And I've just included some examples. I don't know if any of you guys are interested in computer science, but SIS 160 is a class that is in the SIS department, but also, counts as a math class in the eyes of the MEAM department. So if you were to take that class, it could count towards the SIS minor, the math minor potentially, and even the math elective credit that, as you guys can see, you're going to need to take 10 math and natural sciences credits, and some of those are going to be electives as well. As you can see, in my schedule, it says mathematics and then SIS 116 bold next to it. In the more liberal arts realm, the writing stems also, most students try and double count those. So for example, writing stem 073 counted for the writing stem requirement, of course, but then also if you haven't taken a writing stem yet, then one thing you'll want to do is make sure that it also counts for either a humanities or a social sciences credit. So each writing stem counts for either humanities, social sciences, or neither, which they call free elective. You're gonna want to take it for one of those 2 humanities or social sciences, since you have to take up to 7 of those classes, or you have to take at least 7 of those classes anyway, and you may as well have the writing stem count towards one. It's one less class you have to take later. And then more in the realm of upper levels, MEAM 508 is a class I'm in now, which counts as a MEAM upper level for my major degree, but also counts towards the MEAM, also counts towards the either Robo master's degree or MEAM master's as a technical elective. So, that's another example of one class counting for multiple credits. And then EAS 545, Adam might be able to speak to this a little bit more than I could, but it counts towards the minor and also a general elective.
Yeah, no, so that's a really good point. So I am in the engineering entrepreneurship minor. And so if any of you guys are considering minors or a second major or even a dual degree that we'll dive into later, you really need to focus on tightening up your schedule through this idea of multi-counting. And again, Lauren Kemp is a really good resource to go dive deeper on requirement specifics with respect to this worksheet that you see in front of you, because she can override a lot of changes that you plan to make and make them double count for you on your worksheet. And again, the worksheet that you see in front of you is for current juniors with 40 CUs, and the freshmen right now, you guys are only having to do 37 CUs, which we are pretty jealous of. Keshav, would you like to add anything, or?
Yeah, I think you guys did a great job covering what we can do with double counting. The one thing I would say is that it's your responsibility to know which school, if for example it's multiple schools or multiple minors in different departments that you're talking about, it's your responsibility to know which one is the most stringent. So an example of that is for the math minor, the math department doesn't really care where you count the other math courses. The MEAM department is more stringent on that regard. If you're talking about, for example, submatriculating, it's the MEAM department on both ends, and they restrict you can only double count up to 3 courses. If it's, say, between Wharton and the engineering school, well, then Wharton is typically more restrictive on what you can and not double count. The difficulty there is that Lauren Kemp may not have all of the answers, and so it is definitely, it takes a lot of the planning up front to make sure that you have like laid out all of those rules side by side and understand what's the most restrictive. So I would definitely encourage getting on top of that soon, and certainly reaching out to some of the upperclassmen who have been to similar shoes, who can definitely provide some guidance on that front.
All right, great. So the next section is natural science electives, and we're not going to go into detail on this right now because we have a lot of other content that I think would be more interesting to the rest of you guys, but we will blast out the recording as well as the entire presentation that goes through a couple of these, for example, other classes within natural science that you guys can take if you want, but feel free to read this after, or if anyone's really interested in these classes, we can go over it at the very end. But we'll dive right into the next section, which is going to be math courses and electives. And also keep in mind, once you review this presentation tomorrow, or I guess anytime you want when you're going through advanced registration, you can click on these additional information hyperlinks to which takes you directly to the Penn Engineering website to get some more information. But we'll go ahead and get started on the first section with math courses.
Yeah, thanks for that intro, Adam. So the math courses you guys saw in the worksheet that we showed earlier, but just to go through them again explicitly, Math 104 is going to be equivalent to Calc BC from high school. 114 is multivariable. Math 240 is linear algebra and partial differential equations. And then Math 241 is going to be more in differential equations. So those are going to be the 4 core required math classes. Some of you guys may have come in with different levels of experience, whether it be from AP exams or placement exams. So some of you may have started right with 114, or some of you might be planning to take that next semester. In either case, you're more than okay in terms of being on track for later MEAM classes, as long as you take 114 at some point in your freshman year. But if you haven't taken 114 yet, one suggestion I have is try and enroll in the engineering section. I know that a lot of the curriculum is different for our year than yours. And especially with math, they kind of overhaul the whole system to best help you guys out with getting started in the midst of coronavirus and all. But that being said, the experience that myself and Adam and a lot of others had with Professor Robert Greist was truly just amazing. Like, he's one of the best professors I've ever had, I would say. He designed all of the textbooks for the course. He, pre-recorded all the video lectures, very accessible out of class. So he's just someone you really want to learn from. Also, the problems themselves are more tailored towards engineering, whereas if you were to just take, also I see a question in the chat, which we'll get to in a second. That's a good question though, about ENM 251. Just to finish my thought for right now about Math 114 though, if you don't take the engineering section, then you might be put in with non-engineers, and those problems won't really be as engineering oriented in terms of application. So that's another reason that you should really aim to take that engineering section if at all possible. And then now moving on to the topic addressed in the question or in the chat. It looks like other ASME board members have already responded, but just to reiterate, Math 241 is going to be offered every semester. Math or ENM 251 is going to be offered only in the spring, and that's taught by Professor Michael Carchidi. So, both of them cover the same foundational content, but in terms of, similar to 114 in terms of applications in engineering, 251 is going to be a much better bet. And also just in terms of teacher quality, I actually started out taking 241 last fall, really realized that those teachers weren't, I guess, as engineering oriented or as accessible outside of class as I heard about Professor Carchidi. And so then I actually just dropped it and waited till the spring anyway. And I know other students have had similar experiences. Basically, 251 is definitely gonna be your best bet if you're gonna be able to plan around it, such that you can wait that long to take that 241, 251 credit up until the spring. So that might mean that in the fall, you might just want to fill that math class with one of the electives. If you've already taken 240 in your freshman year, and then in your sophomore fall, you're looking to take another math class while you wait on 251 becoming available, a lot of people will take Math 312 in that semester, which we'll actually talk about later. But that's just another option that you guys have.
Yep. All right.
Mhm. Yeah, so just to get into a little bit more here, Math 312, like I had said, is a class that a lot of people will take um, instead of 251 if 251 isn't available in that semester, but they want to take another math class. And then other than just that, it's really essential, for MEAM students that they take as much linear algebra as they can. Really, like a lot of professors will say that 312 should be mandatory for the MEAM department, but isn't. So if you're able to take it, definitely do. Other than that, it's not going to be the hardest class for you either, because a lot of it is just review and enhancement of material you already learned in Math 240, which is a prerequisite. Some students in other departments will even skip 240 and go right to 312, but I believe in me, and it's encouraged you take both. And then the second one just won't be as bad as a class with all new material. And just to keep going down these bullet points, we already talked about the fact that it's really helpful for occupying your sophomore fall math slot if you don't have one already. And then, yeah, Math 313 is similar, but I guess I can't really speak to this as much because I took 312. It's similar, but the homeworks have MATLAB in them, which is really great because, anybody in this meeting knows the MATLAB is going to be really important for anybody in engineering, really. So 313 is more on the coding end. 312 is more conceptual with theory and abstraction. And then big recommendation, take this if you anticipate using linear algebra, whether that be for robotics, or also if you're planning on getting a math minor, then this can count towards the math minor. Overall difficulty, you can see up here, difficulty, not too bad, 2.5 out of 5, quality, really up there with about 4 out of 5. And then this class, game theory, Math 432, is taught by Professor Vasu Tiwari, who's one of the most well-liked professors in the math department. You guys can check him out on Penn Course Review. I don't know if you've heard of Penn Course Review, but it's a really good website that Penn Labs put together for checking reviews of professors and courses. You can get difficulty, amount of work, etc., a lot of features of classes, but you can check on any of these classes we're talking about up there for actual feedback from students and end of semester reviews. But yeah, so very easy, interesting, and fun class. Not a whole lot of workload, and focuses on the mathematical models of games and combinatorics. So something that's really cool, if you're just into that stuff, but also not too bad if you're looking for an easy class. And I would definitely recommend it if you're looking to get a math minor or count credits towards that math elective in the MEAM major. And then as somebody put on here, Vasu is the GOAT. So definitely, definitely encourage you to take that one.
All right, Brian, I think
Yeah.
you're on this one.
So Stat 430. I think for post-engineering students, you're not allowed to take Stat 101. So this was like kind of like your only course, like intro stat course. Besides, like, I think Jason's in an advanced one. But I would recommend this to fulfill your math minor, and it's also like, from what I've been told, like it's also useful for your Robo Master if you're trying to pursue that. And I wouldn't, like, the class is kind of hard, but I didn't take AP Stat in high school, and I'm like doing pretty fine in it. So I think you'll survive. You only really need multi-variable calculus, and it's not even like that much. It's just understanding like double integrals. But yeah, and also take it with Prof. Lowe, Mark Gordon Lowe. He's the best.
Yeah, something I like to add to that. I think it's like really important to meet all professors in the first few weeks of school. I'm not going to say which of these 4 professors I didn't enjoy particularly, but I think it's really important to get a sense of all the professors. It's really easy to go into a class for like one section of Stat 430 and then go to another section for Stat 480 just to experience how the teacher quality differs, because it's really important in terms of your development and how you're learning. If you don't identify or particularly enjoy the way a teacher teaches, it could be a disaster, right? It could potentially cause you to become less motivated. And so that's really important in the first few weeks. Go to different professors if you don't enjoy the one that you're already assigned. And once you're there and you realize you like one professor, you can try as hard as you can to switch to that section.
And then one more thing about this, just to be quick, is that you see in the recommendation that if you plan on pursuing robotics or machine learning, then a background in stat is really critical. So that's kind of where it comes into your 4-year plan and kind of planning ahead what's a prereq for what, knowing what you ultimately want to do. Not that you have to have your whole life planned out, but just think like, oh, if I'm interested in machine learning, I might want to take this just so that I have that option down the road. So that's another reason to take Stat 430.
All right, any questions? No, okay. All right, so the next section is professional electives. And so yeah, again, feel free to look for additional information after the end of the workshop, but these are really going to be your technical electives that still have some relevance to engineering, but they can be math, they could be natural science and engineering courses. And again, you're required to take 7 of these courses for the freshmen. So the first one is a really interesting class that I haven't taken yet, but I got a really good testimony actually from one of Miranda's friends. It's called Engineering Economics, ESE 400. It's taught by Thomas Castle, who is a really world-renowned professor who's also part of the engineering entrepreneurship program, which is a minor that I've taken. It's not really recommended for freshmen, but it's a really applicable class that teaches you skills that is really important that you can take as a sophomore or a junior. That has real exposure to industry experiences as well as really good case studies. As engineering students, we may not read as much, but this is one of those opportunities if you do enjoy, touching on that liberal arts side of yourself, if you want to do that. But I think some of the key recommendations are to be familiar with Excel and know basic economics terms, stat, and taken Math 114, as well as motivation and experience with public speaking. This is one of those classes where the professor will call on people and want to know what they're thinking, and so you want to be able to exercise that public speaking and have a lot of opinions when you're talking. So you learn more about, like the economic side, the finance side of engineering projects, and really helps if you want to go into industries such as like project management, or you want to go into consulting, or something more management oriented with your engineering degree. And it's pretty difficult, 4 out of 5, but still very high quality. Okay.
I can talk about this one. So
yeah.
Engineering 105, it's a course on MATLAB. I took it and I had no prior coding experience, and I had a really good experience. Highly recommend taking it with Graham, great professor. Had a good time. It's a lot of work, but the exams aren't too bad, and I think it's a very manageable course I took it in my freshman spring, and I would recommend taking it then. Generally, I think with my professor, Graham, you can get a lot of help, and it's a very manageable course, and definitely crucial to learning MATLAB for the rest of your time in mechanical engineering at Penn.
All right.
Yeah, so SIS 110, 120 are both going to be really great classes to take if you're interested in coding. These can actually count towards the coding requirement if you want to take them instead of Engineering 105. And if you're like me and planning to get the SIS minor, then both of these are required for the SIS minor as well. So that's another instance of that double counting that I talked about earlier. SIS 110 is going to be basic Java for people without programming experience. SIS 120 is going to be Java and also OCaml. They assume some level of programming experience, but nothing specific, which is why they use OCaml, since like, you can see on this slide that nobody really uses OCaml in the real world other than this one trading firm. So, that's just another way to level the playing field and say, like, if you're in this class and you don't really have an upper hand on anybody else until you actually get started. And, again, just great intro programming concepts, good way to learn a couple languages, and also satisfy a couple requirements while you're at it. There's going to be a final project that you can really learn from, and also the homeworks are really interesting applications that you're going to cover there. And overall, these courses are pretty difficult, I would say. At least 120 is pretty difficult. It is nicely curved, but in terms of workload, that's why we have that difficulty 4 out of 5 up there, but you do get a lot out of it as well. So, if you're really into coding, maybe satisfy this requirement with 110, 120 instead of Engineering 105.
All right, MEAM 101.
I can take this one. MEAM 101, very crucial class just for being a mechanical engineer. You're going to be expected to know CAD when you get to upper level MEAM courses, like we use it now in your 247 sophomore lab, let alone professionally. You'll Dr. Roberts, awesome professor. You'll learn SolidWorks basics. Depending on whether or not you take this class on, you'll also learn more about laser cutting, and you'll be able to work in the RPL. It's a project-based class. You have teasers, which kind of teach the concepts, and projects, which test you on those concepts. Again, highly recommend. It's very important. Just as a mechanical engineer, you're going to have people expect you to know CAD. Online, you won't do the physical act of like laser cutting, 3D printing, but you will learn a lot about CAD. So it's difficult just because you need to stay on top of your work. That being said, as long as you do, you'll get a good grade. I'd say try and take it in person, but if you can't, taking it online will still teach you what you need to know.
Great. So this next class is MEAM 201. In order to take this class, you actually have to take MEAM 101. So the kind of progression is take MEAM 101 and then take MEAM 201. A lot of us have taken MEAM 101 and MEAM 201 and have benefited a lot from it. This is the class where you really get to actually apply all the CAD learnings that you've been doing in MEAM 101 and actually build a Stirling engine from start to finish. And it's a really exciting project. It's competitive, and you're able to add your own creative flair to it. I modeled mine after the Philadelphia Chinatown arch and made my engine in that aesthetic. So it's a really, really interesting class. Very difficult though, because you are working on individual parts, and it's not like the whole thing is due at the end of the semester and you have all semester to figure it out. You actually have to submit parts at the end of every week. And so it's like keeps you on track and keeps you benchmark. So highly suggest you take this.
All right. So if you really enjoyed manufacturing and like 201, 501 is like the next step. It's essentially 201 on steroids. You go from like manual lathes and mills to like CNC milling and lathing, and then you also learn other processes like injection molding and like thermal forming, carbon fiber layups. Along those lines, it's really beneficial in like building a portfolio, and usually people take it junior year, but I was able to get it sophomore year. Wow, that's it.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So this next class is one of the easiest professional electives that you can take, and it's through Wharton as well as through engineering, and has a really awesome professor, really knowledgeable. He has a lot of experience. He actually designed Tide Pods as well as fruit gushers, so you can see the connections there. But it's a really easy class and has those hands-on opportunities with the learning lab, where you take a product from start to finish, understand the business context, understand the product development cycle, but also understand the engineering implications there. But the big drawback here is that you're really not doing that deep of CAD or manufacturing. It's really about prototyping, so using cardboard to design a product. So the difficulty is really low and the quality is kind of mid-range. It's not as engineering-esque as you would imagine, but it's a really easy class to take if you want to satisfy that professional requirement. This is also a really good time to talk about how important it is to grab lunch with professors. I was able to get an internship at a startup after getting lunch with Professor Ulrich. So again, you never know how different professors will be able to help you out through your career. Okay, so this next session, we're only going to go over a few of the general electives, but again, these are social sciences and humanities. So SSH stands for social science humanities, and then TVS is technology, business, and society requirements. And again, there are courses here that you guys can look through after the fact. Yeah, so the first course, again, I'm in the engineering entrepreneurship minor, and this is a really, really good class, one of my favorites of all time. I want to kind of go into more like a business route through engineering. And so my professor, Vanessa Chan, she was like an ex-McKinsey partner. So really kind of helped me through, my interest in program management and consulting. So really good opportunity if you want to kind of go along that more startup business route through your engineering curriculum and your experience at Penn. The course load it's not too difficult, but if you keep up with the lectures and you do the weekly assignments, it's usually 2 assignments a week. It's usually a quiz and then essay, but it's really not that hard to get the essay done if you do the readings. So that's why it's a 2.5 difficulty, and the quality is still really high. And again, this is only offered for juniors and seniors. So if you guys want to do that more business route, you can kind of offer this in and put it into your slot schedule.
Okay, so psych is just a very common elective. It's social science humanities. Dr. Waller teaches it. It's a very big class, but it's not very difficult. And now that the class is online, it's been streamlined, so it's very easy, I would say. You just need to keep up with your assignments. That's where you might get lost, but as long as you keep up with your assignments and you make sure that you're covering everything you need to cover in the syllabus, you should be fine.
All right, we're going to skip engineering ethics, but just really quickly talking about this, it's a requirement, so just be smart about when you're going to take it. It's really easy. I guess like take it with friends, but this shouldn't be too difficult to slot this in. Okay, and then this is the last kind of general elective we'll talk about. Again, so this is there's a concept called like the depth requirement, right? So you have to take 2 courses within your general electives that are within the same department. And so what I did is I took Econ 1 and Econ 2. And it was a really easy flow. I did it my freshman fall, Econ 1, and my freshman spring, I took Econ 2. And again, just learning a lot about economics. And if you're considering like a career in business, or you just want to learn about how money affects the world, it's an interesting set of classes to take. But again, really think about that depth requirement. If you took one philosophy class, maybe think about if you really enjoy that, then maybe take another philosophy class, as Jason did, to fulfill that depth requirement. All right, and then I think the last thing we should talk about is writing STEM within here. And again, guys, you can go over this later on. But I'm sure most writing STEM requirement met, and some of you haven't yet. But I think what's really interesting is that you should double count it as a general elective. It's really important to do that, because there are some writing STEMs that aren't counting as general electives, and you can mess yourself over, and you're gonna have to take an additional humanities or social science or TBS class if you don't do that. So make sure you're double counting that, and also choose a topic that interests you. I took mine on like a philosophy course on human consciousness, and it was really cool, and I was able to stay motivated and do well in that class because I was interested in it. So it's a general rule of thumb. You want to take classes, especially in those general elective requirement zone, take things that you're interested in so you can do well. And again, there's additional requirements at these links. Any questions? Nope. Okay, next section is they kind of just going over minors, second majors, and dual degrees, which is a huge topic conversation that I'm sure you guys are considering. All right, Jason.
Yeah, so the MEAM minor, I think most of us, at this panel are MEAM majors, so I'm not super familiar with this, but just to talk about some of the requirements, it covers a lot of foundational concepts. So if you're kind of interested in MEAM, but not as much willing to dedicate, your future and your major to that, then maybe the minor could be a good fit for you, because you'll still cover some of those major concepts. And as you can see on here, the requirements, are listed. You can look into those on your own if you want, but I don't want to read through them. One important thing is that a cognate course might be an unfamiliar term to you, and you might see that somewhere else. A cognate is basically a course that can be approved to count towards that credit, although it's not actually listed as like one of the primary courses that'll meet the credit. So, you can find a better definition of cognate somewhere else, but just keep in mind that that's what it is. The math department will also do a cognate where, if you need to take, for example, and I think we'll see this, actually, yeah, I'll talk about cognates more in a couple slides in the context of the math minor, but just remember that's something that can be useful for meeting requirements. And then recommendation, again, just if you want to learn about MEAM, but you don't want to major in it, then pick up the minor, and it can still be really useful because mechanical engineering will come in handy in professions even besides mechie itself, such as robotics.
Yeah, and then just to go off of that, this is another available minor, engineering entrepreneurship. The class I mentioned earlier, AAS 545, which I'm in right now, fulfills that minor. And a lot of these minors, you can see it's 6 credit units. But what's really good about this minor is that it includes engineering ethics, which you already are required to take. So you really only have to take 5 extra classes that are outside of your major, as well as some of these other classes that can also double count for your professional electives. So, really this concept of double counting pertains to fulfilling major specific requirements as well as minor specific requirements. So yeah, I've already talked a little bit about this minor, but it's really good for those folks who are interested in business management. And it helped a lot in my interviews for consulting this semester. All right, next.
Yeah, so one more thing, I was talking about minors earlier. In the math minor, we'll similarly cover a lot of foundational concepts in math. All the specific courses are listed up here, and you can see that there's actually overlap significantly with what you have to take as a MEAM major anyway. So 4 out of the 7 required classes you're already taking. And then a 5th one you'll also take because you need to take a 5th math class for the MEAM major. So beyond that, you just have one more cognate, which just to talk more about that from earlier, a cognate is a class that's not in the math department, but for just one class, you can say, hey, this is mathy enough. And there's certain classes that they agree and say, okay, we'll count that towards your minor. So for example, MEAM 210 is often approved as a cognate. SIS 160, which I mentioned is a very mathy class in the CS department, is often approved as a cognate. So at that point, the math minor is really only one additional class, other than these electives and cognates. So we would very heavily recommend. And then some of the classes we already talked about, like 312, Stat 430, and even game theory, which is more of a fun class, are frequently taken to complete this minor. And then the SIS minor is not going to have as much overlap with MEAM, but are still classes that if you're into CS or just want to build that toolkit because, comp sci is one of the most applicable fields nowadays, even for people who aren't necessarily computer scientists, it's definitely a good path that you can take kind of on the side. And so, it has 4 core classes that create a strong foundation in programming. So that's like algorithms, data structures, just key concepts such as like modularity and coding. All these things we talked about earlier in the context of SIS 110 and 120, both of which are required here. And then you also have 2 SIS electives, one of which is at least 200s level or higher. So that's a good way to kind of get yourself exposed to more higher level comp sci without necessarily overwhelming yourself with everything that comes with the SIS major. Just getting that experience there. And again, if I said MEAM is applicable for a lot of later things you could be doing in life, comp sci is super applicable. Coding toolkit is really important. In robotics, it's essential. We had said MATLAB is going to be important, even if you're not into coding at all. I see a question in the chat. Engineering 105 cannot count towards the SIS minor, unfortunately. So that's why if you're leaning towards the SIS minor, then you'll want to look at these particular 6 classes and make sure you take those all at some point.
Yeah, and you can take SIS 110, and that actually accounts for the engineering 105 requirement too, and that can also really be good for the minor in SIS. All right, the next one is the minor in data science. Something that's relatively new that's been offered. It's really important because there's a lot of data engineering roles popping up at all these different companies because big data is being really good to inform business decisions and engineering decisions. And so this is kind of courses that grab from engineering math as well as computer science as well as statistics. Sorry, I can't speak. Statistics classes. And it's only 6 CUs. So if you're interested in data science, see yourself doing data engineering roles at companies, this is a really good minor to add on top of mechanical engineering. Okay, Keshav. Oh, my bad.
You skipped a slide.
Did I skip a slide?
You just went forward.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so for those interested in something beyond the School of Engineering, specifically a degree in Wharton, there are generally 2 paths that you can choose to pursue a dual degree. One is the coordinated program, which is the Jerome Fisher Program of Management and Technology. That is a dual degree program in both CES and Wharton, but it has a separate application. You don't just get accepted to the School of Wharton. The Wharton School, you get accepted to the program itself. And so generally, students who are in the School of Engineering who are applying should do so, I think in the spring of their freshman year is the deadline. And there are specific requirements that are listed here in order to apply. For anyone interested, I would certainly recommend applying. Generally speaking, the course load for a dual degree student which is coordinated is more manageable than uncoordinated. I think Elizabeth will talk about the uncoordinated on the next slide, but if you're at all interested in pursuing both, I would recommend going the coordinated route because it makes your life easier. The main reason is because coordinated allows you to double count certain courses, which from a pure numbers argument, the minimum number to take to graduate from the coordinated dual degree is 46. If you're doing uncoordinated, it can get as high as 55 or 56. And so then it becomes really hard to graduate in 4 years if you're doing the uncoordinated route. So just something to consider.
Yeah, so for uncoordinated, one thing I would note is you can apply for coordinated, the MT program, in the spring of your freshman year, and for uncoordinated, you can apply in the spring of your freshman year or the fall of your sophomore year. So you have that extra semester to get in some of the required courses. I would say that if you're interested in it, I would recommend looking at the requirements in when we send out the PowerPoint. It's under additional information, but there are a lot of required courses that you need in order to apply and be considered. So definitely get on that as soon as possible if you're interested. One thing to note is, yes, the uncoordinated is more classes, but it still is like manageable, and with double counting it's somewhere around 50, so around 4 more classes. And the applications are a little bit different. For coordinated, you need like letters of recommendation, and for uncoordinated, it's just an essay. But if you're interested in pursuing a degree in engineering and Wharton, I definitely recommend it. And honestly, I would recommend applying in the spring of your freshman year to both and increasing your odds.
All right, and then we're gonna skip like the section on Collier Art and Sciences. This is pretty self-explanatory, but I mean, you guys can look at the additional information unless someone really wants us to talk about this. Oh, let's see. I guess Roger has a question. Keisha, would you like to take that?
I don't know if I'm a great person to answer this. Maybe Elizabeth.
I think it varies year by year, but somewhere between like 1 and 5. Not a ton, because I think there's only like 60 people in the program, so pretty small.
Okay, great. Next, we'll talk about upper level classes. This is really important because you have to take these classes for your upper level requirements, and it really helps you kind of figure out what specific concentration you want to be in, and probably is a really good topic of conversation when you're applying to jobs later on, as well as if you want to pursue a graduate degree.
So MEAM 502 is the class that I'm taking right now. By the way, I'm a senior, so energy engineering. So basically this class takes the core classes of heat transfer and fluid mechanics, and kind of build it further on looking at different processes and analyzing the energy flow and workflow in different processes. So the professor who teaches this class is the professor for MEAM 333, which is heat and mass transfer. And her name is Jennifer Lucas. Professor Lucas is like one of the nicest teachers I've ever had at Penn, even, not even just in engineering. She's really understanding, very flexible to student learning. She like checks in a lot to see like what she can do to improve, especially now it was like online learning and stuff. So I really recommend this class. It's not very hard. Most of the learning does happen in the homeworks. Currently, because the class is conducted online, there are no exams. It's just weekly homeworks and a final project. Oh, and the final project that my team is doing is like, we're looking at how to optimize like turbochargers. So to give you some idea of like what gets talked about in the class.
Seems really cool. I might take that class.
Yep. And then let me know if you can't hear me, by the way. I just put in headphones, but I think I should be good. Anyway, MEAM 508 is going to be a class in materials manufacturing and materials manufacturing for mechanical design. So it kind of hits over those 3, overlapping but separate topics within MEAM. It's going to be taught by Professor Kevin Turner, who is the department head. So you've probably gotten some emails from him. Super good guy. You know, as you can see on here, you know exactly what to expect from him. You know, very consistent in terms of like course structure, you know, when he's going to post lectures, his office hours. He's very willing to meet with you out of class and provide that additional help. And, you know, it's just a really cool way to kind of expand upon the knowledge that you've learned in the foundational classes. So like MEAM 210 and 254 will give you a knowledge of solids, but now you learn more and also learn applications of things you've already learned. So just a really cool class there. And then you can even work on your final project at the end where you and a team of, you know, 2 or 3 students can start to actually build or design something using all the concepts covered. And that's something cool that you could like put on your resume.
All right, Brian.
All right. So this class is pretty easy. Like you learn a lot about like manufacturing processes. So like just beyond like the generic like milling and lathing, you go into like more depth like additive manufacturing and like post-manufacturing processes. There isn't too much work in this class. It's pretty easy. And I don't think there's any exams. It's just a final project with the team. Yeah. It's good for like exploring different processes that you won't really get to know.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, so the next 4 classes for upper levels, I would recommend to anyone who is at all interested in thermodynamics, fluid mechanics, heat transfer, aerodynamics, any of that stuff. I realize that maybe some of these classes seem a little bit far away, especially to the underclassmen. But I would say a good way to think about these classes is in terms of their prereqs. So if any of these descriptions interest you, definitely look at the prereqs and make sure you're on track to take those during your freshman and sophomore years, and then go from there. But in terms of these courses, so the first one, finite element analysis, is taught by Dr. who's I would say probably a very knowledgeable and a rigorous professor in the MEAM department. Essentially, you learn about all of the math behind the simulations like ANSYS or COMSOL that you actually use in the real world art, and you learn how to use COMSOL itself. So it's a very practical and useful class, even for those interested in solid mechanics. Yeah, so I would definitely recommend it. And I would, it says here, I recommend becoming friends with the TA. He's very friendly and he'll certainly help you out. So, yep. The next class, it was, when I took it, it was taught by Dr. but now it's taught by Professor Radia, which is another great professor in the MEAM department in fluids. This class is definitely, it's a very niche class. So it teaches you a lot about all of the exception cases that you'll hear but never really cover in MEAM 302. Specifically listed here, we have like viscoelastic flows, multi-phase flows, shear thinning, creeping flows. Those are all the very like particular application specific types of flows in fluid mechanics, which is very interesting, but it may or may not be relevant depending on what your interests are. I have this listed as a difficulty of 4 because the content towards the end of the course gets very sophisticated. Having said that, it is not very difficult to do well in the course. Because both the TA and the professor definitely do a great job of making the homeworks and the projects accessible. So if you're interested in learning, you know, line by line all the content, it certainly is a difficult course, but it's not very hard to do well.
All right.
The next one, aerodynamics. So this one was historically taught by Professor Bruce Kaufman. It is now taught by a colleague of Bruce's, Dr. Mihir Mistry, who currently works at Boeing, and he part-time teaches this course in the evenings. His specialization is in rotorcraft aerodynamics, so he loves bringing in those applications to the course. And he'll teach you from a very application-oriented perspective, which I think is great. A lot of the projects that we actually have and the homeworks that we have are essentially very similar. It's a more elementary and fundamental way of looking at it, but it's very similar to what you would end up doing in the real world when analyzing different like wing analyses or airfoil analysis. So it's a very practical course. For anyone interested in aerodynamics, I highly recommend taking it. I've heard rumors that Dr. Mistry is introducing another course, rotorcraft aerodynamics, that will be offered soon. So definitely keep an eye out for that. I think this will be a prerequisite for that. But both of these do count towards the mean concentration in fluids and heat transfer. This final class, I would say, is not a class I would recommend to most people, just because it's a very advanced course. It's a required course for PhD students. I would recommend this if you're interested in doing a thesis or research long-term in fluid mechanics or heat transfer. It essentially, it builds on an interested theory of mass, momentum, and energy transport. So this course is actually a prerequisite for MEAM 538, which is turbulence theory, and a few other more advanced courses in the department. It is certainly quite difficult. I would say that if you're interested in the MEAM submatriculation program, specifically in the heat transfer and fluids, this is one of the required courses. It's either this or MEAM 536. So definitely keep an eye out for that. But yeah, I think this is generally a course I would hesitate to recommend to just everybody.
One more course, last course.
So this course is a new course that was offered this semester, and it's taught by Igor Bargatin. So he is actually the thermodynamic professor, and he wanted to teach this course for a really long time. And basically in this course, what you learn is so all these like engineering concepts that you learn in your previous studies, because you need senior standing in order to take this class. All these engineering principles that you've learned already. How do you make quick estimates by doing by like pulling from some like formulas that you already know, and in order to see like whether or not your solution is feasible. So I put like 2 problems in here that are like homework problems that I did for this class. I think this class is very interesting in the sense that like your goal is to get within 1 order of magnitude within the exact solution. And I think this class, or the homework in this class, is definitely like the most enjoyable homework that I've ever done for engineering.
That's so cool. All right, well, guys, that is the end of our courses and electives presentation. I think it's time for us to, again, chat. You guys can ask any questions you want. I know we have like 3 minutes left, but actually this is going to bleed into the MEAM ambassadors office hours. So I'm going to put the link right here. Some additional MEAM representatives are going to be speaking and answering questions about courses and electives if you want to go to the office hours after this. But we can take a few questions now if you guys want.
Yeah, if anybody wants to come off a mute or just put it right in the chat, please feel free. We're here to help. Or was anybody interested in the slides that we skipped? Because we could maybe go over those in the last like minute or 2.
Could you go back to oceanography?
Sorry?
Could you go back to the oceanography slide?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so we skipped over those natural science classes, but yeah, so
I actually took oceanography, so I will say it's a very difficult class for undergraduates to get in. I think it's because the reason is because it's generally an LPS class, but if you can get in this class, do it because it counts for natural science, in case you don't want to take another chemistry or biology class. And like it's pretty interesting. Like I think you learn about like tides, the ocean, and like beaches and stuff like that. And like I think it was a very easy and interesting class.
A good question in the chat was, where can you find the presentation after this, Adam?
yeah, that will be on our website, and I will, I guess I don't have access to that right now, but I will put that in the chat. I guess could one of you guys do that? Yeah, so we'll put the recording and the presentation PDF, or I guess PowerPoint, on our website. And again, just we'll be communicating about future events. Ooh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, so again, we didn't go over everything, especially in the general electives section. So you guys can feel free to review this afterwards to help out with your advanced registration. Yeah, and so it's now the top of the hour. So we're going to go ahead and transition to the MEAM Ambassadors Open House event. I remember those are every Friday at 4 p.m. We've done Among Us in the past. We've done a Quizzo, and now we're just going to do a continuation of this ASME event. So I'll see you guys at that event. Thank you everyone for coming today, and we're going to end the recording right now.